Very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us for yet another session here at the Youth Ideathon that's brought to you by the United Nations Development Programme and implemented by NASE in partnership with many other people that you'll hear about, or you probably have heard about. They usually like to say that you save the best for last, as if, and this sort of applies because our session today is a very interesting and unique one in the context of where we are, especially as Uganda. My name is Ben Mwine, and thanks a lot for joining us. My job is to simply make sure that you have an absolutely wonderful time engaging with our panel today and talking about ideas on how we can be able to build better and smarter cities in Uganda. Now, of course, if you've traveled the world and talk about cities and compare them to Uganda as cities, you already begin to see why there's so much room for growth and possibly a lot of potential for us, especially in terms of creating ideas and being innovative and creative in this space. What's going to happen this morning, as always, in case you haven't joined us before, is that we will have a discussion with an expert panel who will share the insights on what they think a smart city should be like and where we are and what needs to happen. And then, of course, this is supposed to be in the context and perspective of you getting ideas on how we can improve them and provide solutions for them, which is where then those ideas are brought to life with an opportunity for you to get some funding and business support to make that happen. We'll hear from Dennis Aguma, who is the founder and CEO at NASE, in just a couple of moments. And then after that, we'll get into our panel, hear from them for about an hour, and then open up the line for Q&A so you can be able to ask any questions that you have. And then, of course, even after 11, when we close the official session, if you still have any questions, want things to be discussed, some of our panel who are able to make the time will stick around to make sure that you get those answered. Of course, in terms of being very sensitive and aware of the different people around us, we've got Susan Mujawa on for sign language to make sure that people who are not able to communicate normally are able to follow the discussion. Right, let's hear from Dennis now to give you an overview. I'm sure he's tired of doing this because he's been saying the same stuff literally for 12 days running now. I'm sure if you put him in a coma, he'll probably still be able to say what he's going to say now, but it's important to give us context of where we are, where we're coming from, how we are doing at the moment, and then we'll get into our panel, a very distinguished panel that I'll introduce in just a little bit. Dennis, good morning, over to you.
Good morning, Ben, thank you very much. Yes, you're right that most of the stuff I've been talking about, I often have to kind of repeat it because we are running what we call thematic sessions, and people have applied for participation in the Ideathon in different categories. So there is likely to be someone who has joined this particular thematic session because they're interested in this space and maybe not in tourism, maybe not in health. So we don't want them to miss out on some of this information. However, some of this information has actually been changing, as you will notice as we go along. One of the key questions I want to talk about is what is NASE? We're a social enterprise that was registered in 2015 with support from Kingston University, although we have gone on to receive support from the University of Surrey, Anglia Ruskin University, and Birmingham City University, where I lecture and do my research around enterprise and entrepreneurship. We focus mainly on facilitating entrepreneurship and enterprise skills among youth generally in higher education institutions and vocational colleges. Although, of course, we do have some programs such as the Youth Ideathon that focus on the wider youth. One of the things, maybe if I could share this video, is actually how do we do this? We do this by using practical hands-on co-curricular entrepreneurship education to deal with students before they leave the world of school and join the world of work. What you're seeing there is a video of Makerere College, COBAMS, the College of Business and Management Sciences at Makerere University, where working with them in a co-curricular fashion, students actually go out and do real projects. They don't just study about entrepreneurship in theory, they actually go out there and come up with real products and services that they showcase in what we call an expo. Here we had about 1,300 students from one academic year, imagine, in one college. So 1 year, one college. Imagine if we could be doing this across all the 3 years, across all the colleges, not just in Makerere, but over 50 plus different vocational colleges and higher education institutions. We believe that the challenges we're looking at right now in terms of youth unemployment as evidence that we have not dealt with this issue at source. And what NASE does a lot of is to inspire these young people, such as the Youth Ideathon, to skill them and to incubate them. And often, thanks to the support of our partners like the UNDP, we usually have grants that are made available for these students to realize their dreams. Our vision is to leverage the power of entrepreneurship, achieve sustainable socio-economic transformation. And as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of this through hands-on co-curricular entrepreneurship education. Sadly, we've not been able to do that now. Some of the pictures you're seeing from our LEAP conference, which is one of the biggest conferences for students. Here again are some of the hands-on products that these students will have made in just about 4 months, studying in 4 months and coming up with real products and services. The panelists will make note of some of the products like charcoal briquettes. These are good stuff for, especially relevant to the topic that we're talking about today. They do come up with products, drinks and things like that. We had guys who were manufacturing like washing machines that you can use while you're cycling. Interesting stuff that these young people have been able to do. But the way we're able to do it is because we're using a co-curricular approach to entrepreneurship education. So what is the Youth Ideathon? Every business starts with a simple idea. And the Ideathon is really borrowed from the word ideation, ideate, which is it's a creative process of generating, developing ideas and communicating them. The UNDP has been doing a lot of work in supporting young people, especially even youth businesses under their department, Youth for Business, which supports businesses from a variety of sectors. Agriculture, smart cities, I think, are one of them. Lots of other areas, including tourism, with grants of anywhere between 10,000 to 40,000. But often what the UNDP has found is that sometimes the requirement for some of those businesses is that the businesses must be registered and perhaps have like a bank account, things like that, which most of our young people don't actually have. So there was a need to have an entry-level program that is going to galvanize the youth, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. All businesses are shut down, and we're taking this opportunity to help young people to reimagine a future so that we're building back better. So the bar has been lowered so much so that we're only focusing on the idea. Once the idea is good, we will take you through what we call master classes in the next phase, and I'm going to talk about this because right now we're in the application process and the thematic sessions. The next phase is the Ideathon, which is the boot camp where we essentially work with these ideas, making sure that you're best able to articulate them in such a way that you can pitch and get your grants of up to 100 million shillings and 6 months business incubation support. These are invaluable, especially the incubation support in terms of mentoring, in terms of access to the resources that every entrepreneur out there definitely requires. We have also put together, because this is very important in terms of protecting your ideas, we put together a digital and interactive dashboard that is meant to help the judges to go through your applications whilst protecting your intellectual property. This dashboard is very helpful. If you've not received an email, please check your spam, because we found that some of the messages are getting into spam. But this is actually how we're going to process and progress your idea. You can log in your idea, you can update your idea, the judges can rank your idea, they can you can interact with the with your mentors, with the judges by sending them messages and responding back to you. You can log notes, you can schedule activities, you can schedule meetings with your mentors, you can add attachments. When we get to pitching, this is where you're going to be attaching your pitch decks and business model canvases. I would encourage everyone, if you haven't done so, to please go on to www.undp.nase.co.ug. In the top right corner is a login button. So log in, and the details that you use to log into the platform initially should be able to help you to log back into and you have access to this. You can begin already to edit your idea. What we have found, which is what we had originally intended, is that individuals, once they've attended panel sessions like this, they get wiser and find ways of updating their, they get some insights that enrich their idea. So you're welcome to do that as we go along. So far, as I mentioned yesterday, we have over 3,300 bright ideas, and this number keeps growing every day. But those figures I talked about, if the panelists can see, is that the urban development is not as highly exciting for these young people as maybe agriculture, manufacturing, STEM, and ICT. So perhaps for our panel, there's an opportunity to maybe shed more light. My suspicion is that most of our young people might not be very much aware of the opportunities that are available as Uganda gets over 8 new cities. You know, in terms of rural urban migration, these people have to sleep somewhere, they have to eat food, they have to travel. So I'm looking forward to these particular sessions on how they can illuminate more light about the opportunities in this space. Maybe lastly, but by no means least, to thank our panelists for sparing time to join us. I know with lockdown and everyone working from home, everyone is so busy. So to spare your time is really something that we do not take for granted. And to our support partners in particular, I won't mention them all, but you'll have seen them on our leaflets and flyers, where we are in the spirit of the UNDP by deploying an ecosystem approach where we're working with quite a number of organizations, small and big, that have supported us to make the Ideathon what it has become. And for that, we're very grateful. And of course, to the UNDP Accelerator Lab team, who have been there with us all through, and one of whom is actually on the panel today, Innocent Ejolu. And of course, our gratitude to the resident representative for her passion for young people, for enterprise, for entrepreneurship, for Omuntu Wawansi, for female entrepreneurship as well. For that, we are very, very, very grateful. So I'd like to wish you very good deliberations. I will stay behind after the end of this panel to answer some specific questions. But now over to you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for laying it down very properly. And once again, good morning to everyone who is joining us. I usually like to start by asking where people are, where you're joining the Ideathon thematic sessions from. So if you could kindly go to your chat and simply tell us two things. Number one, where you are, and number two, what do you do? We would like to take note of your presence, so please do let us know where you are and what you do. If you can kindly just throw that in the chat. Someone in Lugazi, Innocent, good to see you. Good morning. Dalton is in Gulu. Good morning to you, Dalton. Good to see you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Diana Kakai in Kavari, Orije. Roman Mugume in Imbarara at Mast. We've got someone in Lugaba Mohammed. Bright is in Munyonyo. Stuart Abenitwe is in Ntungamo. Tungamo is my original village. That's where my grandfather and father were before we moved to Kashari. Sulaiman in London. How's it going, mate? Good to see you. We've got Sarah in Lozira. And thank you so much, all of you. Brian is in Chikoni. Is that Chikoni? Oh, that's the one here in Makerere. I went to school there in Caltech, actually. Edgar, it's so good to see you. How's Liberia? Regards to offer and everybody. Good to see you guys. Andrew Kamoga in Mitiana, Luis in Bogolobi, all over the world. The reason that I like to do this is just to demonstrate how properly global the Ideathon is, but also importantly how, like Dennis keeps saying, in this ecosystem, it's not just about one place. It's about the entire world coming together to sort of fix the problems that are affecting all of us, right? And so as we get started, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Brian, you're a life coach and computer trainer. Good to see you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Right, let's get into our panel for now. And of course, a couple of things that I want to mention to you that are worth noting. Number one is the fact that even as we go on through the sessions, the chat section is very useful for you to engage with the panelists and ask any questions that you might have, which we'll then pick up on later, and of course, you know, and be able to answer and engage with you on. Also, the other very important resource for you is the website, undp.nase.co.ug. That's literally the center of everything that we're doing. So the moment you get an opportunity, that's where you want to go to register. That's where you want to go to be able to ask any questions. That's where you want to get your ideas sorted. And I hope that everyone who's on the call has already registered, just in case you haven't done that yet, right? So we'll start by introducing our panel as we get started today. We've got a very wonderful panel. that has been put together by TESA Advisory Services. And our panel brief is composed of some very, very, very special people. If I was to introduce them by using their qualifications and titles, we would finish the entire session without talking about anything. This is how much of a big deal they all are. But I'll start by introducing a good friend of mine, Amanda Ngabirano, who is the acting chairperson at the National Physical Planning Board. She's also a very avid biker. I'm also very jealous of her because she has a bigger left dimple than mine. But she's also very, very passionate about urban planning. And of course, as we talk about smart cities, she comes in very, very handy. Dr. Amanda, good to see you. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning. Let me start with you by asking you, in terms of defining what a smart city is. Now, you've traveled around the world, you've lived around the world, you've studied abroad. If you've gone to any decent city around the world, if you've gone to Singapore or Dubai or London, and then come and compare it to, no offense to the people from there, but to Fort Portal, which is also a city now, there's quite a big difference, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, but every city is different anyway.
Right.
Yeah, every city is different.
That's a good comeback from you on behalf of the people in Fort Portal, but you do get my point in terms of if you're going to have a city that's going to go in the right direction in terms of development, but also as a smart city. If you were to define a smart city for us from your perspective, what does that city look like in the context, the unique context of Uganda?
One is that it's not about smartness, about being clean only. It's also not about being high-tech, not also about high-rise developments and a lot of concrete. It's about the functionality of the city. Is it actually performing as to the standards and expectations of the public? Is it performing according to the principles of urban development or smart urban development for that matter? Functions or land uses related, or they seem to be in conflict? For instance, you might see, what example can I give? An industry next to a residential area, and then you wonder, is this a smart city? No, obviously it isn't, because you'll be seeing the fumes coming out of the factory, the emissions going into the residential area. That already strikes you as incompatibility. There is no relationship between the functions, and the result of such functions is always very bad in terms of how the city operates, the kind of traffic in that area, the quality of life in that area, the comfort that people have. So that stops being smart. We can also look at smart in terms of mobility, that people have various options of travel which do not harm the environment. The best example is when we have a high capacity transport system like trains, buses, and not only that, but their relationship with the other modes of transport, which are also clean, like cycling, walking. And for the moment that you are in a city and you see that when I arrive in this city, I'm able to choose an option depending on my comfort, my ability, and also depending on my goals in terms of environmental aspects, I should be able to choose. There should be that option. That is smart. The smart element is that it doesn't happen by itself. There is always a smart brain, a smart hand, a smart team behind that. So a smart city is actually very difficult to explain, but it's very obvious to see because those elements do not hide. And human beings are the same. Cities are different, but human beings are the same, and they will interpret that smartness almost in the same way. They will see it. If someone is going to travel for 15 kilometers and they spend 3 hours in that journey, that is a very unsmart city, because that's a lot of productive time. If you spend 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, that's the peak time. Those are 6 hours in a day. That is very unsmart of a city, and such a city has leakages and it's like going to the well with a leaking jerrycan. You will reach home with some water, but it's not enough water for you to cook, to wash, to clean. So that kind of city is unsmart. The process of having a smart city is never ending. It's a continuous process, and it requires a vision of the city managers, which should be shared by the residents, by the people of that city. And when people share this vision, it's very easy to track the changes. I will take you to downtown of Kampala, Namirembe Road and Loom Street. Everybody knows how that street used to be: very noisy, very congested, very crowded, very unfriendly, very humiliating indeed. But if you go there now, of course, we can see that there's an enforcement problem, but you see that there's a difference. So smart becomes an appearance element, but also in terms of functionality, in terms of inclusiveness. When a city is smart, at the end of the day, everybody matters. Everybody is catered for. The disabled, the bicycle riders, the pedestrians, no matter the social class. A smart city, you should not be able to see someone's social status on the streets. Everybody should be the same, should be equal on the streets. So smart, Ben, is quite difficult to explain as one sentence or one paragraph. It's always work in progress, but we have the basics. It has to be green, it has to be inclusive, it has to be interconnected also with the neighboring areas. It has to have an integrated system of work with the neighboring entities. So a smart city is the only way to go as we get rapidly urbanized. Every place at the end of the day is going to be urban. So we need to think about that. Things like, can you imagine that we still have charcoal burning, firewood burning, rubbish burning in places like Muyenga, upscale places like Mugolobi? You see people in gated homes, beautiful homes, burning rubbish. That is very unsmart. So even the smart city component requires a social or human capital development aspect, that people that actually live in that city should embrace the smart city elements themselves. And then we'll start seeing smart elements of a city that one actually thinks about or dreams about. I have talked to some young people, and when I listen to them, I see that they admire the most the orderliness in the developed world compared to anything else.
So again, and that's a very interesting thing, because all the things that you're describing, and I don't want to sound like the negative skeptical person, but you basically make it seem like we are as far from a smart city as is literally possible. Because when you talk about smart cities, in my mind, the first thing I think about is traffic officers standing at traffic lights, guiding traffic instead of the traffic lights. And that for me is as far from smart as anyone can possibly get. But also, I don't know whether it's your God or your witch doctor who are very powerful, but you need to tell us a story of how you managed to get that Namirembe Road corridor. I've got to confess, Amanda, I was one of the people who was very highly skeptical that there is any way in the known universe in our lifetime that that corridor could be turned into a bicycle lane. I will come back to you to shed some light on how that happened, because there's definitely got to be a story there, and I want to hear that.
Something to learn.
Yeah, I'll come. We definitely want to hear that story. Let me come to Dr. Ian Senkatuka, who is an architect and urban planner and a project management professional. He's got more than 20 years of experience as an architect and a planner, a project manager in the public space as well. He's worked with the African Development Bank, with the World Bank. He totally understands the challenges that we're talking about, especially in terms of developing an urban city. He has a PhD from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. He's studied here at Makerere. He's been to Sydney, studied there as well, and got his architecture degree from Makerere University. and is passionate about seeing change in the urban areas in Uganda and other developing areas. Dr. Ian, to you, in terms of your understanding of what a smart city is, I noticed that you have very aptly put the background of a slum on your video. Very well done, Doctor. Very well done. I'm sure you'll talk us to us a little bit about that. On a scale of 1 to 10, Dr. Ian, where would you say we are from being having smart cities in Uganda? If we start with Kampala, of course, being the biggest, 10 being we are there, everything is connected, 1 being we are in the Stone Age.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for that introduction. It was very elaborate, a little embarrassing, but thank you for that. As far as we are, Uganda is a smart city. I would argue that we are at a scale of about 1. I know that KCCA has started doing some things. We currently have 1 capital city and about 10 new cities. And there's hardly been anything done. I do know that some cities like Jinja have plans to do things, but nothing has been implemented. Now, I put this background picture on the screen intentionally so people can understand the context we live in. I would have preferred one of the CBD, but the conditions are the same. We have areas that look relatively planned, and then we have the slums in the middle of the cities. And when we look at a city, we should actually think about the actors or the people who live there. We have we have the rich, we have the poor. We have people who things are not working. So when we're trying to ask ourselves a question about smart cities, we have to start by looking at a city. What is in a city? A city is a physical entity, but it's got people of different types. It's got a green environment, which is actually, in Kampala, we tend to have the wetlands. And the picture behind me is actually a wetland. In that valley that you can see, there used to be a wetland between that hill and where I took the photograph from. But you can actually see that some people are actually settling there in various in conditions that are not good at all. And one asks a question that what needs to be done? So when it comes to the scale we're at, we have just started. We have just started. We have not yet done anything, and we have a very long way to go. But I believe there's a lot of potential to bring about change in these areas. I've been through slums. I've walked through slums. I've been around the country to different towns. And these problems that we see in Kampala will exist in very many cities if nothing is done. And yes, there are examples of what has been done in smart cities around the world. The question we have to ask ourselves is that we are starting a journey. Is the environment right? If it is not right, it is being put right because there is an acceptance from government, central government, and some local governments that smart cities are important to bringing about change. Change to the physical environment in terms of infrastructure and service delivery, because service delivery will also bring about change in people's lives, which is important. How do we change the social, economic conditions of the people who live in the cities and make the cities livable, resilient, and sustainable? We've all seen what's happening in South Africa after Zuma's arrest. And yes, Zuma's arrest could have been a spark, but was that the actual cause? Those are questions we must ask. Or was it the conditions people were living under, the widening gap between the rich and the poor? Those are questions we must ask. But I think, and I believe strongly that the smart city approach is extremely important to bringing about change for cities and for the people who live in them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ian. Very well said. And again, what I'm just hearing you say is that there's literally a blank canvas for our young people to work with, because if we're that low at the end of the scale, it means that there is immense opportunity for people to be able to innovate and come up with solutions that we can be able to work with. If I could ask, that picture in your background, which place in particular is that?
Okay, this picture was taken from the Muyenga quarry, looking towards Bunga. But if you also go to Muyenga and look towards Bugolobi, you'll actually see exactly the same thing. So it's happening all around us.
Yeah. The other day I was on Naguru Hill, and it was very interesting to see the stark contrast between what happens. There's like a boundary just near the police station, the police headquarters in Naguru as you go down towards the Gogo bypass. That's for people who understand Kampala well, where you can clearly see what a stark difference there is. And I'm already learning a lot from all of you so far in terms of how a smart city goes beyond just buildings, but also about the people and the systems and all of that. Again, which for me says there's a lot of opportunity. Thanks, Dr. Ian. We'll come back to you in a moment. Let me introduce Innocent Fred Ejolu, who is an expert with the UN. He's got a master's in science in public policy, human development. He specializes in globalization, trade, and development. He studied economics and development. His expertise is in economics and public policy as well. He's got more than 15 years under his belt as a policy analyst. That's the academic side of Innocent qualifications in terms of the things he has done, serving as a member of the Uganda National Board for NGOs, advisor to the governing board of the Uganda Red Cross Society. For some of us, and we say this quietly so as not to get him into trouble, Innocent Ejolu has been Prime Minister for 3 terms, albeit silently, because he's been working behind the scenes in the Prime Minister's office before he went into the UNDP, and so has a lot of insight as into what government is doing at a policy level to get things done. Innocent, welcome and good morning. You've got a very unique position in that you've worked very heavily in the policy space, but now also in the development space. You're able to sort of bridge a very interesting gap for us in terms of how government and development partners and young people like us here with the Ideathon are able to sort of begin to envision what a smart city looks like for Uganda and bring that to life. Welcome, Innocent.
I think I missed you, Ben. The network was shaky. Could you just repeat the question, please?
I was just saying that you're a really awesome guy, and that none can compare to you in terms of these things. I was just telling people on the call how, as far as I'm concerned, you've been the silent Prime Minister for the last 3 terms, and you're in a very unique position because of your background in the public policy space, but also now being in the development world, to be able to bridge that gap for us in terms of what do we need to be doing at the government level, in the private sector, but also with development partners to sort of bring the smart cities that we want to see to life.
Great. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you to my colleagues, the panelists. We have here very experienced professionals on cities, urban management, urban planning. So I'm just going to fit within the framework of what has been said by Amanda and Ian. Maybe before I talk about what we can do or what we are doing, the whole question of smart cities is a very important question if you consider what is happening now with urbanization. I think in Africa is where we see the fastest rates of urbanization. And of course, urbanization is in itself a good thing because it's indicative of development. But of course, there are critical questions that come, you know, with urbanization. How do we get urbanization right? And how do governments support that process? How does the private sector participate in that process? Of course, at the very best, urbanization can be the essential motor of economic development and help rapidly lift societies out of mass poverty. But at the worst, it results in concentration of squalor. We can see slums sprawling everywhere, and this comes with disaffection, which sometimes foment political fragility. You can see what it takes to get Ugandans off the streets for a serious cause, like trying to contain a pandemic like COVID. The question is why? There are challenges underlying that explain what we are seeing. And it's a question of how we are managing our urbanization and whether it's functional or not. I think from Ian's rating of 1 out of 10, essentially he's saying we are seeing a dysfunctional, process of urbanization, and maybe the status quo around how we manage urbanization, if it doesn't change, then the future of urbanization could produce same or even worse outcomes. So we are talking about a very serious challenge. And I think from the UNDP perspective, because for us as UNDP and the global mandate of helping countries to eradicate poverty while also reducing inequalities and exclusion, our work on cities focuses largely on sustainability, inclusiveness, and resilience. And when we are looking at sustainability of cities, how do our cities tackle the connected issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion? The face of urban poverty is very worrisome. If you walked into any slum, Kisenyi, Chinawataka, or even if you walk in Kololo and you look at that mother with her baby begging or selling a basket of mangoes, etc. So how do we deal with poverty, inequality, and exclusion? While, of course, transforming the productive capabilities that we have, and also avoiding the irreversible depletion of our social and natural capital. That's very, very important, while we lower risks and how we deal with shocks that may arise from that. In terms of inclusion, I think both Ian and Amanda talked about this, but when we have an inclusive city, are we enabling all the people in this city to contribute to creating opportunity? So who is creating opportunity in Kampala, for instance? And who is sharing in the benefits of this development? And who participates in the decision-making process? These are very crucial matters that ultimately give you a smart city. Of course, the resilience question is also very crucial. We have the unemployment problem here with us, and that is a question of livelihoods. But it's also a question of how people are accessing resources, but also how we cope with the challenges that we face, whether it is the climate change, we've had flooding here and has impacted us, etc. So these are the challenges that we are looking at. And a smart city ideally should give you all these elements. Of course, sometimes smart cities are being defined from a tech perspective, which is fine. We can deploy technology to influence changes or catalyze things in the context of the revolution we face, like the digital revolutions, etc. So what is UNDP doing in our local context here? Of course, we've tried to work with KCCA on some initiatives, but not much. Mainly, we've worked on trying to create platforms for citizen engagement, mainly in the construction of infrastructure projects. So we were trying to adapt the clean construction system from Korea and seeing how that could help, promote transparency and accountability in the way construction is done. So we did a partnership with the Anti-Corruption Coalition and KCC, and this was quite helpful, but that was just one aspect in the governance area, in the inclusion area. Of course, we have had engagements with KCCA as part of the planning for 2021-2025, and we recognize that we need to make the enabling environment for urbanization more responsive to giving us outcomes that we would want of inclusion, sustainability, resilience, etc. So we prioritize work in trying to strengthen the regulatory frameworks. We've also prioritized work to enable the new cities get onto the right track from a planning perspective. We're also looking at the big problem of informality. Our cities are largely characterized by informality. It is both a problem, but it's also a solution. Because in the informal sector is where we see the agility, is where we see the innovation, is where we see the entrepreneurship. This is where people are creating things and trying to grow them. The problem is what kind of entrepreneurial societies or communities are we seeing? Are we looking at building an entrepreneurial society around Rolex, around Boda Boda, around vending mangoes, and leaving it at that, when we could end up with jam from mangoes or something like that? I don't know. So we are also looking at that whole area around informality. Of course, COVID has exacerbated the situation of people, the economy. You've seen the impact on practically all the key sectors of this country, whether it's tourism, whether it's the MSMEs, and so forth. So we are looking at opportunities where we can, provide financing, like through the Youth for Business facility, with a target on the young people where we see the biggest challenge when it comes to employment. 700,000 get out of universities and colleges just to look for 9,000 jobs. That's very dangerous, especially in a context where we see lots of opportunity. If you take, for instance, the food value chain, we can capitalize on that, and there's a lot you can do in that system, whether it's processing, whether it's packaging, whether it's delivery, name it. So that's an area that we are looking at. The slum question is one that also interests us, and we think that this is a question that must be confronted. If you look at slums in Kampala, they sit on the most productive land, but the land ownership models there don't work. People have little vivanjas on land that perhaps is owned by a cultural institution. How can we form the right type of partnerships between the cultural institutions, the people, and attract investment that can turn these slums into, the next industrial hubs, or the next eco parks, or the next housing estates in the city, but create value for the very land tenants on those lands. So these are the kind of things that we are looking at. I'll stop at that point for the time being, but we'll be happy to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Innocent. Again, lots of very pertinent questions that I'm hearing, but also very importantly, still lots of opportunities that I'm seeing. Amanda, I want to ask you about something that Innocent touched on, about border rider, woman selling mango on the streets. You did mention that people are the same, cities are different. Is it possible for us to be able to have a smart city that incorporates these things, or do we have to get rid of vendors from the streets and border riders and that sort of thing? And I'll come back to you to shed some insight on that, but also tell us that story of Namirembe Road, because we definitely want to hear it. And I'm sure people want to know that how that is possible and how it helps us to envision a future smart city. Before I come to you, though, let me bring in Chris Okware, a debt for, we call him the postman, because, well, that's pretty much what he is at the moment. Chris is the founder of Postman. He's got almost 20 years of experience in logistics, supply chain management, as well as e-commerce. He's worked with the government at the central government level in the field of procurement and logistics and supply chain, and you know how that can be interesting, especially for a government perspective. His vision is to change the paradigm of the utilization of the skills that he has to make sure that whether it's a big business or the government or an individual, we're able to make use of the sort of basic technologies that we have around us to have better cities. I'm particularly intrigued by the Postman because of something that Chris has been working on in the recent past. And basically, this is something called a National Special Referencing System. In plain English, how a border guy can find your place. You very well know in Uganda at the moment, if you're giving directions to a border man, you have to direct him using the mango tree, Hajat's small shop, and I don't know what else. So if any of those things gets removed, then you have a problem. And what Chris has been working on is an address system where you're able to have an address, literally, which I guess is a very critical component of any smart city. So Chris, good morning. And from you, based on your perspective, what you've been doing with the Postman, again, I'll ask you the same thing that I asked Dr. Ian. How far off do you think we are from being a smart city? Because at the moment, the project that you're doing kind of literally talks about, where we are in terms of being a smart city. Your perspectives on that, and welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me, Ben. My perspective of this really is sort of like time travel. The kind of initiative which we are currently doing now is something which was done in Europe in the 1700s, 1750, 1780, having this kind of spatial referencing system and having a workable postal system. This is the work from a gentleman called Roland Hill. This is in the pre-industrial era of Europe, and that is where we are in 2021. The pandemic has opened a number of opportunities, though there are certain realities which are becoming clearer. The future of work is something which needs to be put into context. The future of business and processes. We're going to find that smart cities, in my definition of smart cities, we need to think about connectivity and we need to think about consciousness. Within connectivity, we need to know that connectivity is not only about telephone, it is not only about financial connectivity, but you also have to have this supply chain connectivity. How are goods moving from point A to point B? Is it a structured system? Is it an electronic system? Can it be cataloged? Can it be recorded? And things like that. Obviously, the challenge has been that we have not been having a spatial referencing system, as you mentioned earlier. If I send my border man to someplace in Nansana, I'm going to tell him behind the mango tree, opposite the Black Gate, behind the petrol station. That kind of narrative cannot scale to anything useful. And this is not only a problem of Uganda, it's the entire sub-Saharan issue. The lack of this spatial referencing system and the lack of being able to solve the problem of where is a problem which we all have. It has its environmental implications because the efficiency and effectiveness is obviously reduced. And with this spatial consciousness, we can be able to more directly move our goods upstream as well as downstream. I mentioned earlier an issue of consciousness because we living in urban areas, we sort of feel that one would use his postal system only to receive goods. But there has to be a consciousness that we are dealing with raw materials going to a processing plant, and then from the processing plant they are coming to the finished consumer. So what people are only seeing is the downstream effect of how goods are moving. But if the consciousness is blown to show that we have both the manufacturing and the processing coming in, which can be positioned in a place where we can better know how to utilize these technologies around us. The role of entrepreneurs, I think, and I think where there's a problem, the more problems that you have, the more solutions that you shall have. So our opportunity actually is that we have a lot of problems. I had one of the speakers earlier saying that we are almost starting from zero, and that is really true. But the fact that those problems are there means that we have a lot of solutions to provide in solving those problems. And one thing is shocking is that the realization that these problems are there means that they are local to us. So we own them. So we own the solutions which we are going to create. The intellectual property which we create out of this can only be our problems which we have solved. So it is an African problem and therefore an African solution. So I'm fairly optimistic that it's going to be a beautiful future. Obviously, speaking on the opportunities which exist, I feel there's the cottage industry has not been more vibrant because of the costs associated with it. And I see things moving from a point where you have to set up a shop and do something in the heart of town to situations where the cottage industry is actually manufacturing going on at homes, at people's residences for different type of solution provision. This is the kind of vision which we're trying to impact the population with at Postman, and I hope we shall be successful in that. There's also the issue of any impact story cannot go very far if you don't have the progressive governance framework from government. This is where I would particularly like to thank the Ministry of ICT for its progressive policies towards solving many of these problems. And this goes to put us in a very good space. I think I'll stop there for now. I'll hear from everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's very encouraging to hear you talk about being optimistic, because the honest truth is that you really discouraged me when you talked about us being 200 years behind. And yet you're right when you think about it. So it's encouraging to hear you say that there's hope for us in terms of where we need to go. Just a reminder for everyone on the call that all these sessions are being recorded and are uploaded onto the NASE YouTube channel, which you can access, of course, on YouTube itself, but also you can go to undp.nase.co.ug and you'll find links to all the sessions, not only for this one, but for all the others that we've done on agriculture and manufacturing and tourism. And there's been some really, really interesting things being shared, like you're hearing on the session today, in case you joined us for the first time. Also, of course, our panelists are right now able to interact with you in the chat. In case you have any questions specifically for any of them, you can be able to share those and they will respond to them as and when they are able to as we go along. Let me do a quick poll. So you've heard what Dr. Ian has said, you've heard what Chris has said. If I ask everyone on the chat from on a scale of 1 to 10, again, same scale that we've used, 10 being, I guess 10 being Dubai and 1 being, what would be the most remote place at the moment in Uganda? Last time I was in Chivoga, it wasn't doing too well. So let's say 1 deepest village in Chivoga, 10 being Dubai. Where do you see our cities at the moment? Actually Kampala, because well, the rest of the cities are still quite far behind. So let's work with Kampala as a starting point. So Dubai is where we want to go. Chivoga is where we've come from. Where do you see Kampala at the moment? Lynn says 2. Wow, that's not too good, is that? So please do type in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you see Kampala at the moment in terms of what you would want to see as Bana, is there a negative? Surely, Bana, it can't be negative. At least we have some traffic lights somewhere. That should surely account for at least 1 point. James says 4. Bana, you've killed me. Dennis says 4 as well. Brian, you're saying 2. Blair says 2 as well. Oscar, you're putting us at 3. Same with you, Maurice, you're putting us at 3. So obviously no one is thinking about anything even beyond 5, right? And then it says that you're waiting first to fix the potholes. Well, let's be honest, there are potholes in the UK as well, so really give us also a little bit. But obviously, as you can see, there is general consensus that we are quite a bit far off of where we need to be. Which brings me to you, Amanda, then. Chris has compared us to being a 17th century system at the moment, that we are 200 or so years behind. And yet we have some 2020 model cars on the roads at the moment. We have traffic lights which work once in a while. So the question, I guess, then becomes, how do you create that uniqueness in terms of our current circumstances? Because we're not going to be a London or a Dubai or a New York at any point in the near future, right? But yet we can build towards a smart city. How do we do that in the context of our local setting, but also remember that we have all these new cities that are being brought up? And I'm going to annoy a lot of people by saying this, but I am a bit embarrassed by my hometown, which is now a city in Mbarara, because it just looks like a glorified slum at the moment. There's absolutely nothing in that place that makes you think city. There's a bunch of buildings, yes, and all of that. But my God, I don't like going to Mbarara anymore. It's my home, but every time I go, I get depressed, to be honest. Amanda, I don't know whether you think I'm being too harsh on my hometown. You let me know.
By the way, Ben, Mbarara, your city has one of the most admirable waste management system right now with a public-private partnership. You need to go to the city clerk and get something to appreciate about what they are doing in terms of being smart. So not that bad. And the driving experience in Mbarara is terrible. However good the road might be, the people, the motorists there, how they move, I think it's the cars that drive them, not them driving the cars. They just stop
The
anyhow,
thing is, Amanda,
anywhere,
for
anytime.
us, we have bought cars, so we must drive them how we want.
So the one that is making the city unsmart is actually the human element of the city. So that's something I just wanted you to know. And also, Ben, comparing Dubai with Kampala or anywhere in Uganda is also unsmart, because like I said, every city is different. There are so many unsmart things in some cities that people think are smart. Dubai, for instance, switch off lights in most of the buildings. You are in total darkness, life stops. I think that is an element that requires a sustainability and resilient approach to make our city smart, which they don't have. In most of our cities, we have natural lighting, so we can open up, we can just design our buildings, and we don't have that much money to go high rise, but we have a smart element which we can still be proud of. Innocent and Chris hitted on some few things, also Dr. Ian, about the informality, the poverty issues, and Ben, you were wondering about the mango lady or man on the streets. It's okay, and it's actually very okay. I have seen vendors in Washington, DC. The question is not that should we or not have vendors. The question is, where should the vending activity take place? Is it regulated? And that brings in the function of government in this kind of arrangement. Informality is okay. Urbanization is good, we need it, but the quality of our urbanization is rather poor. And when it is poor, it comes with the inconveniences and leakages, like I mentioned earlier. The mango woman should exist because it's also about livelihoods. But where should this mango woman be? Should she inconvenience other road users in that city? Should she or he be placed on a walkway, be placed on a green island that is meant to green the city? I think we need to separate these things and know how we need to organize our cities. They can still remain smart. We can still have the informality, but the informality has to be organized. This is where we have a gap, and that is something that is easy to do, but requires more of not infrastructure changes, but more of software organizational changes like education, sensitization, enforcement. Then the factor of border borders, that's also informality. To me, the border has a component of smart city. What is that delivers you at work within 15 minutes? If you were to drive your car, you would take an hour. I think that is smart in terms of time spent. But it's also smart because you have a human interaction. When the border rider picks you up from work, there is usually that interaction that we need in a city. That is called the social fabric, the social strength of a city. A city should not only be buildings, vehicles. A city is nothing without has that social aspect, which you might not see in other cities. Those moments, people tend to bond. The rich on the border feels the same as the border rider and vice versa. However, it's also about the gap that they have to fill. That's also being smart. Should people not move at all? If there's no public transport, we don't have running trains, we don't have a BRT or bus rapid transit system. So what should people do? They have to be at work on time. They have to go to the hospital on time. So you can see that they are smart in a way, like Innocent mentioned, they jumped in to solve a problem. I think Chris also mentioned something about it in terms of it's our own problem, so we have the solution. The city will keep moving because the border is coming. I think to me that is smart, but it's unsmart because the border is inefficient. It's carrying one passenger, max maybe two. Of course, there are abnormal cases when they have 3 and more passengers. With that space that border at that moment, the carrying capacity is low, and the way that they are not regulated is dangerous. So that becomes unsmart, totally unsmart. The fault in that case is not really on the borders part. It's about the governance, which also Chris talked about. A city is not only about infrastructure and abandoning it at that. There has to be a follow-up mechanism to make the infrastructure work for the people and the people to change with the infrastructure. Sometimes we wonder, should we have the infrastructure first? I think, Ben, you've seen people at the traffic lights, they are green and they don't move. They are red and they move through. Of course, we have moments where the traffic officers come in, and that also is something we can explain later. But the infrastructure can help people change their mindset, but the mindset can also make the infrastructure work better to make a city look smart. Someone mentioned about creating opportunities. This is very important for an inclusive city. If we don't create opportunities for all people, no matter their social status, that city will not be able to absorb some shocks. And it will also have what we call civic erosion, the erosion of civic pride, that people no longer feel attached to their city. They don't like it. They don't want to relate with it. Like Ben, you have lost your civic pride for your city because of the unsmart elements of it, like slum developments, traffic and transportation problems, waste management that is not well handled. So that loss of civic pride really can make a city vulnerable in most cases.
It's very interesting. I've got to be honest. And again, I think Dennis has mentioned this on the previous sessions, that you come into all these sessions and you pick up so much that literally blows your mind. My concept understanding of smart cities has always been, high rise and bullet trains and all of this stuff. But from what I'm hearing you guys talk about, basically, is that it comes down to like a mashup of all of those things, but especially the people. Let me come to Ian, and then we'll go to Chris and Innocent before you tell us that story, Amanda, about Nambirembe, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Dr. Ian, based on what I'm hearing so far, the question then I guess becomes for me, are we able to build a smart city around that slum that is on the background of your profile picture? Can we be able to say we shall work with that place as it is and put some sort of smartness around it that makes it maybe a bit useful? Amanda just said something that caught my attention that Hadija picked up on about informality and urbanization being okay, but they should be smart, right? So it's okay to be, informal and in the urbanization setting, but be smart in the way it's done. Is there a future, and this is worst case scenario, I guess, in terms of the extreme, can we see a place where Kasokoso is smart in some sort of extent, where the people at that level are able to live in some sort of smart setting, as I don't know if that makes any sense, Dr. Ian.
Thank you, Ben. Ben, before I answer your question, I just want to just bring out one important issue, that urban areas are engines of growth of countries, and cities are extremely important. I need to bring out one point, that cities compete. Kampala competes with Kigali, with Nairobi, with Dar es Salaam for investment. So even as we continue doing this, we must actually think about the competition for investment and tourists that come with having a city that works, a smart city, and a city where services are delivered. But in addition to competing internationally, cities should also compete nationally, where Jinja competes with Kampala, and Mbarara competes with Jinja, because at the end of it all, investment can go anywhere. And that is a task for the urban managers. How do they make their cities competitive? How do they make them competitive so that they can attract adequate investment? Most of the urban managers are struggling with constraints. Quite a number, the ones in Kampala and I think in Jinja, have smart ideas. However, implementation has been a little bit tough, probably because of constraints. I know they've had resource constraints and other constraints. And the question is, what can be done to give them adequate resources so that they can function? Can we have smart solutions from the people that can increase revenue for the cities? Because at the end of it all, very many urban managers actually think that central government will provide the finances. For central government is constrained and has lots of priorities. And I think the cities, even as they hopefully wait for something probably small, if we think about COVID now, the amount of money that has gone into COVID, it is possible that cities will get very little money. And it doesn't mean they should not work. They should think outside the box. They should work with the communities who live in the cities, think innovatively to see what can be done to improve the management, make the cities better and attract investment. But to your question, on the areas that you see in my background, the slums, and you asked that, can we come up with smart solutions? I'd like to argue that we can. Not necessarily in the slum directly behind me, but generally in slums because the conditions are the same. For a smart city, we use digital solutions. We use the smartphones. We use the iPads. Of course, the question is, do the people have access to that? But I think that is where the ideas that will be created by the people, the people who are going to compete will come from. Can we, even if there are no smartphones, we have the normal phones, can SMSs work? What is the potential for sharing devices? What is the potential for these people who live in the slum to come up with a solution developed from them with the city? Because the people who live in the slum understand their challenges better than anybody else. And as Innocent said, there are lots of ideas that can come from slums, that can come from students, that can come from young people. It's really about understanding a problem and trying to see how one can think outside the box. I'll raise that issue. I think it's important that people think outside the box, think innovatively, where you can use digital technology, but innovation, and work with the people in these slums, probably undertake adequate research and a needs assessment to understand what's happening, to see what you can do. Now, there are challenges. Because if you look at the smart cities around the world, it's a new concept. It's not a very old thing. And even in Europe and America, where they're advocating for smart cities, the technology is new. It is costly. Some of the sensors that are put in roads for traffic control are quite costly. But what can be developed locally with what we have to bring about change? We may not necessarily be ready for the sensors that they have in America, but we may be able to use what we have, think outside the box, think about sharing to see what can be done to improve the conditions of the people in the slums. I'll stop there for now. I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah, no, you have absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ian. Let me come to you, Innocent, first, and then we'll go back to Chris and Amanda before we open up the Q&A. In terms of opportunities that there are, and Dr. Ian has just mentioned this, we are not a very rich country, right? So our solutions have got to be things that you would think help us sort of reduce costs, right? One of the innovative things I've seen around is in this time, when you go to an upscale place like a shopping mall, you will find an automatic dispenser for sanitizer at the door. When you go to some of the lower places, the bus parks and some of these other lower end shopping areas, they do have semi-automatic dispensers where some guy has fabricated a piece of metal and you put your foot on it and it automatically dispenses the sanitizer. So there definitely is thinking where you can take the high-tech solutions and implement them in a way using some sort of low-tech. So Innocent, in terms of what you would encourage our participants to do in terms of finding solutions and opportunities, what do you see as being important for us to be able to get the smart cities that we want, especially in the perspective of the fact that we are not a rich country and we don't have the billions of dollars that Ian has just talked about, where you can put sensors on every street corner.
Thank you very much. First of all, I don't think it is true that we are not a rich country. In fact, we are a very rich country if we talk about what we are endowed with, the people themselves, the knowledge that they have, and the resources around us, even our location itself as a country. Uganda is super rich, by the way. The challenge really is about how we unlock our potential, and it's going to come from the people and our creativity and how we grow these ideas into real businesses. Because every problem you look at in Kampala City, whether it is waste, whether it's transport, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's even the governance question, these are potentially areas where you can develop very good products or services just to deal with the needs of the city right here where we are, and create that dynamic where our cities actually drive the growth of the economy. So the question that we really need to address is a question of how we cultivate entrepreneurship. The informal sector is huge. By the way, Uganda is one of the best in the world when it comes to starting businesses. But we are also, I think, the worst when it comes to seeing those businesses grow and expand and attract investment. So there is something that we are not doing right when it comes to helping entrepreneurship. When I talked about entrepreneurship, what type of entrepreneurs do we want? When I use the example of the lady selling mangoes or the boda boda guys, I was just trying to say, can we create conditions where we can see those people go into something bigger than what they are doing? Because they're already developing very important entrepreneurial skills, but they are stuck where they are, either in the GNATs or on the Rolex and stuff like that. And some of these guys, when you check, they have good education, maybe O-level, A-level. They're also connected to the world through internet, etc. So I think when we engaged the city and said, look, KCCA, how can we work with you? The first priority of KCCA was we need support to build citizen labs and incubation centers. That was their first priority. The second priority was we need support for the informal sector and for local economy, especially as we are recovering from COVID-19. The third area was around digitalization and how we can push the digital revolution and tap into that. Then the other area was on risks, etc. What that tells you is that the management of these urban authorities are not short of vision. The challenge is, how do you actually get to tap into the knowledge of the people out there in their contexts where they are, in terms of how they generate solutions for the different challenges that we face. Tech is going to be part of this equation, no question about that. And we have evidence that in the ICT startups, we are seeing a lot of ideas coming up from our young people. And actually, some are being snatched by smart people in developed countries, for small money, $50,000 or $30,000, and it disappears with all the patent and stuff like that. So I really think we need to think about how we can discuss our development challenges in the cities more, how we can go into the informal sector, work with these enterprising people, and see how we can grow these businesses. We need to create incentives for these businesses to grow. What sort of financing is available? What sort of support, incubation support, skilling is available? What sort of support is available for marketing? We now have the African market. How many people in Kampala who are in business are thinking about tapping into markets in West Africa or North Africa? Can our entrepreneurs start thinking about the global stage? Use local resources to reach these global opportunities? Those are the questions we have to address. So the informal sector is something we have to confront aggressively. There are going to be issues for government. There are going to be issues for industry. But ultimately, we need an ecosystem kind of approach that goes into this area. But young people can be the leaders, because innovation is leadership itself. We just need our young people to move. If you check where the opportunities for investment in Uganda are, you will be encouraged that these young people can start businesses with even $1,000, $2,000, whether it's in housing, whether it's in real estate, whether it's in ICTs, whether it's in the food, whether it's even in logistics. Like now, people need a delivery of a fish. You can organize something and find those deliveries moving, or drugs, whatever the case may be. So we have a lot of work to do. Just to add, Ian mentioned a very, very important point. Our urban authorities are struggling with the question of resources to drive urbanization. If you look at the infrastructure gaps, we have a very huge. How many roads would you want to be plowed out of the city and redone, like this beautiful road on Acacia? Practically all the roads. But where are those resources? If you look at the revenue side of KCCA, you can't tax the informal sector. You need to first build it, transform it, then you'll have a revenue base that can drive modernization of these cities. So we have a development challenge here, friends, but it's going to be solved by youth, the young people here. Your idea could be that solution for West. Your idea could be that solution for, transportation. Your idea could change the way the city thinks about public housing, or the way it thinks about public transportation. Beyond the our metro now is the border. That's a disaster. We need to be thinking away from that. Of course, people can ride the border, but with population expanding, how many borders would you need for mass exit? If it's 5 and people need to leave the city, it's crazy. So we have lots of opportunity, and we just need to be more entrepreneurial in the way we approach these cities, and turn our young citizens into the real drivers of the growth of these urban settings, whether it's Soroti, Mbale, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Innocent. Very great insight. You talked about tech there. I want to come to you, Chris, on that very particular issue of technology and how important you think it is. Also, I want to hear from you in terms of what you've done with Postman, and how difficult that has been, or easy that has been for you to get out of. You said it was, we're working 1717. How has that been for you, and how important does technology become? And then we'll go to Amanda and hear that story about Namirembe Road before we turn over to our Q&A.
I'm sorry, I kind of got disconnected there. Just come again, please.
Yeah, no, we could hear the disco in the background. And I was asking about the issue of technology and how important it is, because when you're talking about a smart city, there's got to be tech involved, right? So if you're talking to entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs today, how would you advise them to try and harness that technology? What opportunities do you see for them? But I also would like to hear from you a little bit about Postman and how easy or challenging it has been to try and get us from 1717. I think you said it was 1717, right? To get to 2021. Yes. I would love to hear some insights from you on that, how easy it has been to get people's addresses from Mango Tree to actually having an address, and how does that work?
Okay, thank you very much. It's been quite a journey. A startup is not a simple thing, as many people feel. It would be shocking if I told you that I've been at this for approximately 11 years, and you just have to keep going. Again, one of the things I think, and I really thank UNDP and NASE for such an event, is that what is needed mainly is mentorship, because we come sort of from an education system which puts us as job seekers rather than job creators. Job seekers rather than job creators. Now, to move from one mindset to another is extraordinary, and it's only through mentorship can somebody be able to break that divide and pursue a job creation calling. When we started, I'll be very open about this. There was no business incubation center. There was no innovation hub. We had to create that on our own. We had to almost go through the motions almost by guesswork, by trial and error. But now we are seeing a lot of these incubators which have this structured thinking process within which entrepreneurs can work and scale their businesses. This is also very welcome. a lot of technical support, technical in terms of what to do and how to do it. A lot of these innovators are doing initiatives which are blue ocean, so to speak, where they end up in areas where they're in unknown territory, and how to reconcile this and derive value from it is also very important. I want also to call upon everybody. It's with patriotism, with love of their cities, and that desire to impact in their cities positively, for job creation, for social wellness, and that type of attitude would only be encouraged. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Chris. And on behalf of everyone on the call, allow me to applaud your resilience. We could hear the little postman in the background, not happy about something, but the way you stayed calm through that is nothing short of absolutely remarkable. When I grew up, I want to be like you. I would have been losing it if that was my son doing that. You are amazing. Amanda, tell us this story. I really want to hear. I know a lot of people want to hear about this story. Just in case anyone doesn't know, by the way, I think it's important to give this context, right? When the first time I met Amanda I was doing a talk show at NTV, and this beautiful woman walks into the studio. She's very loud. She is imposing. You can't miss her. And I'm like, who is this? And then we sit down and I listen to these ideas coming out of her head. And I couldn't help but think, this woman is just simply mad. In which universe are you going to go and take the busiest street in the whole of Uganda and turn it into a bicycle lane? I honestly thought you were insane. Obviously, you've been vindicated, but I would love to hear that story. How challenging was it to get that Nambirembe corridor done? But also, in the context of our discussion today, what opportunity does that present for our young people who have these crazy ideas about, making our cities smarter that they can then go and pursue?
Thank you, Ben. I remember that time very well in the studios, how you were staring at me and saying, oh my God, what a crazy woman. First, I had to change my mindset towards bicycle transport. In my mind that time, that's about 2009, I thought, this is not a mode of transport to be in any city. A city is supposed to have cars, buses, trams, trains. Bicycles should have no space. So when I changed my mindset, I started thinking differently, and also in line of, I can do it at home. I can do it back at home. So it was in line with my research at that time, and I decided to actually take the first steps, have the initial design. It was rejected by my supervisor at the university. They mentioned that this is not academic enough. We need something very academic. And I told them, look, I want something academic, but also that I can transfer at home and have some change back in Kampala. So I had big issues with my supervisors, but I insisted and said, this recommendation will stay and I want to pursue it. So when I returned to Kampala, I made sure that my vision was shared with the Kampala City Council that time, which is now KCCA, and told them, look, we have so many people walking, a few cycling, we're having traffic congestion increasing. All these people that are walking, if we don't provide for them other smart ways of travel in a safe and inclusive way, there's a risk that they switch to cars, and we shall not be able to provide for all those cars, let alone stand the impact that they have on us in terms of environment, the air pollution, in terms of noise, traffic congestion, etc. At that time, the leadership was quite unstable at KCC, but what helped me was to build the right partnerships. This is something, now this is the third point in this story: mindset change, the vision building, then the right partnerships. So I mobilized people from the UNEP, UN Habitat, some Dutch companies to support me in this cause. And we arranged several meetings. One day we invited all the councillors of KCC at Imperial Royal Hotel. And at the end of that meeting, it was approved, documented, and only waiting for funding to be implemented. So when the city leadership changed, it kind of died. And I felt so bad because it had gotten a political approval of the councillors. I didn't let it die. I still nurtured it and introduced myself again to the new leadership. Gen Farm CC bought the idea very well. The engineers at KCA bought it very well, and we had to work it out together. We marketed it. And to be honest, consistency is something that we all need if we are to change anything, to have a smart city that we would like to see. I think we need to start looking at the change, but also our impact, our input into the change that we want to have. I started marketing it, publicizing it. That's how I landed onto Ben and several other people who were discouraging me and saying, crazy, mad, how are you bringing this to Kampala? But I asked them, look, we have bicycles everywhere. We have pedestrians everywhere. We are not bringing them here. We are only facilitating their movement. We are providing for them because they are part of a city transport system. For a city to be smart, you need those options which are clean and can keep the city population healthy. That's how I became friends with the Lord Mayor, Elias Lukwago. To be honest, at first, he would just stare at me and smile, you know, his nice smile there, doubting that really this thing is possible. In fact, the moment the Lord Mayor okayed it, that's the moment things started moving in a good way. That's why you didn't see any fighting of the downtown people, because we had already engaged them. We did a lot of publicity. We translated our messages into Uganda. We delivered building by building the change that was coming. It took 10 years. What I would like to say as I conclude on this story is right now, that place has attracted people that never used to like going there. Pedestrians are seen walking with their children and not really worrying about their bags, their child disappearing. The bad thing that we see right there is about enforcement and compliance, which really is something that I mentioned earlier. Infrastructure alone is not a solution. We need to see the education, the sensitization, the mindset change continuously being done. Enforcement is a must. Any city that does not have enforcement really is risking to lose billions of money investing their infrastructure provisions. The last bit, I would like the youth and any other person that is contributing to change in the country or in their cities. Patriotism, Chris already mentioned it. If you don't love your country, for the love of my country, I had to return because of this project. I really had to return back to Uganda from Europe to make sure that I become part of this change, and I did not leave my child to die. My child got born. I just have to make sure that my child's legs are not broken and they remain straight and become energetic in the change. Stick with the change that we would like to see, and don't use this word in terms of politics. Use it in terms of your sense of belonging, the pride of your country, the pride of where you come from, the pride of your professionalism, the ethics of your professionalism. So we need to look at those aspects and make sure that we deliver change. I'm proud of that project, and many more are coming. I hope I can be part of many other changes for my country and also for the continent. We need that big picture to be proud of ourselves for all the small changes that we are able to make. A pedestrian looks like he's a poor person, but it's not true. There is no car that enters a shop. It's the pedestrian that enters the shop. That means for a shopping area to function well, the pedestrian comfort has to be prioritized. It also means that people who go shopping in the neighborhood don't have to drive. Facilitate them, pick your bicycle, walk safely, and be able to shop in a convenient way. So those are some of the things that I think we need to master. The aspects I've shared with you: mindset, vision, right partnerships, consistency, marketing and publicity, political will, and lastly, patriotism. Thank you, Ben.
Wow. How do they do standing ovation on Zoom?
Stand up.
I think if anything ever was, you know what, you talk about being proud of this project. I think it's fair to say that we are proud of you for what you've managed to achieve. And I think your country does owe you And it's very encouraging again to see things like this. You are in a place where you had an opportunity to be thriving and making lots of euros in Scandinavian countries, and you decided to come back because of how passionate you are. I know I joke about with Dennis a lot about this, but it's good to see him coming home now and what NASE is trying to do with the Ideathon, where he could have been, sitting at University of Kingston and Birmingham or whatever, sipping tea near the Queen or something. But here we are trying to see what we can do to help our country. And so I'm terribly inspired by all of you because of this passion that you all have for what we can achieve. Apart from Chris, of course, who I still can't get over the 1700 and us being 200 years behind. But let's get into some of your feedback and questions now. Let me start by just sharing some of the things that have been said in the chat in terms of, in case someone has missed those. Someone here, this is from you, Larry. You're saying, talking about trams, they can solve the problem. We don't have to build any other pathways. And you're saying that we can use traffic islands on the roads we already have. I guess the question would be, and I think Amanda and Ian can respond to this, are you able to make that work with the current lack of enforcement that Amanda was talking about? We all know how difficult that has been, enforcing even just the basic traffic rules we have at the moment. How do we do that? This is coming from Muji. You're saying that the people of Uganda have to think about service and service and service, which I guess is what Amanda has just been alluding to as well. Ben, my namesake, you're saying that we confuse improvisation with entrepreneurship. You're saying that people are seeking survival and selling mangoes today, hawking CD covers tomorrow. Your grandma calls it Okiyi Mbeda, while the one in Karagwe calls it Okchwampia Chwampia. And you're saying that we need mega industries employing people in their 10,000s with planned settlements and planned structure and amenities. Well, guess what? Ben, it's the people on this call who are responsible for making those industries happen and come to life. Mary says, in our cities, people have a sense of belonging, which makes us so unique and admirable. And you're saying, so us in Mbarara people should go and sensitize our people, as tough as it might be, so we can make our cities the best that they can be. I hear you, Mary, I absolutely do. And you hear about this, about different cities around the world, Liverpool and New York and Tokyo, Madrid, all having like their own sort of life and culture. And so you absolutely, and even Kampala is very well known for having its own culture and life. So that becomes a very important thing. So, and you also said something that I actually found very fascinating. You're saying that people admire Dubai and buildings, which is mainly business, but it's just everyone is a visitor there and there isn't too much attachment in sense of culture. And I think that's actually a very, very good point. In terms of the questions that are being raised, Benjamin is asking, he has an idea of supplying solar panel walls, which can be used in construction and things like that to help smart cities. And he's asking, as we look towards smart cities in Uganda, can things like this be adopted to come in as an addition to hydropower? And so I'm just going to run through the questions. And in case any of them haven't been responded to yet, any of the people on the panel can talk about that. Someone is asking here to you, Chris, in particular, and I'll come to you when I finish reading the question so you can start with this. Is there a plan of sort of developing some sort of satellites in a way that we can be able to have a locating service in real time? I guess this is in respect to Postman and how we do this addressing system. Davis Bassa asks a question that I'll put to the entire panel. Can't we just move our capital city from Kampala so that we can start building better and start afresh? Because he says Kampala at the moment seems to be a pretty big mess. And he cites examples of places like Russia, Nigeria, and TZ, where they've been able to move their capitals to sort of reduce the pressure on the cities that they have. And I think even South Africa, which has 3 capitals at the moment, and they've sort of had a system like that. Innocent, this is a question specifically that was meant to you in terms of how we can be able to have an initiative in skilling the youth through clear education programs that require special skill specialization at an early age. I guess that brings in a concept of ECD and how that can be done. And this is from Christine Alupo. Good to see you, Christine. It's been a while. You're saying that from the insights that are being shared here at the moment, you're saying that from what the experts have been saying, it's clear that many things in Kampala came together reactively and not necessarily as a result of smart city implementation. And you're saying that what is the profile of that smart opportunity Is it possible to redeem the new cities before we go too far? Can Kampala's fundamentals be salvaged? Or you're asking the same question that has been asked, do we need to start a new city? And then she also says that, Amanda, financing cities is a challenge, and the notion of a municipal bond attracts mixed feelings. And she's curious about what the authorities' take is on that from your perspective. So maybe let's start with that question. I'll start with you, Amanda, and we'll go around the panel in terms of that concept of maybe moving the city. Do we need to move our cities? And then we'll come to the specific questions that were put to Innocent as well as Chris, and then we'll pick up some more. Do we need to move our city?
No, we don't really need to move our city. We need to change what we don't like in our city. Some things may not be changed 100% or 360 degrees how we would like them to be, but there will be an improvement, and we shall achieve the goal of functionality. We shall achieve the goal of better business. We shall achieve the goal of inclusiveness. We shall achieve the goal of a better working environment. To shift the city, I have never understood it, but I can understand that people don't like what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, the sewage, the poor drainage, the slum environment in their, when they sit on their balcony, what they see. But what is required is to change what is not likable, because city or not, every environment works better when it's organized, when it's planned for, rural or urban. That's why we actually talk about urban and regional planning, or urban or land use planning. Even the rural areas, you see that in Uganda, our rural areas completely disorganized. The whole village can have scattered a few homes. There is no order at all, no efficiency in how the land is being utilized. So rural or urban, the concept is orderliness, is organization. If we'd like to see the capital that you have in mind, this is something that we can discuss and have a completely new place that we can develop from zero or from one, and take it how we would like it to be. But that does not mean that Kampala is moved there or the capital is moved there. We could still maintain this capital, but also have a better organized city that will make Ugandans proud. If you go to Karamoja, for instance, that place can be heaven if we plan for it now. In fact, I was engaging the minister in charge of Karamoja about this matter. This is the time that we can have a city that Ugandans can admire and say, yeah, but still Kampala can remain the capital. I have been to Berlin. I still don't understand Berlin, because I think they had to do a lot of urban regeneration, some changes, but it looks good, it looks attractive. And there's one thing that we are getting mad about and losing, is the history of our cities. Erasing the history of a city is very dangerous, because in future, that will be the reference that, for instance, will be making for us money in terms of tourism. How did Kisenyi used to look like? People will want to see. So why erase the history of a place? This is also the other aspect, Ben, of smart cities. History must be preserved. Culture must be preserved. Even if we are to change the whole of Karamoja, we have to identify a place where we maintain the huts. What are they called? The name of those small huts there in Karamoja. We have to maintain our past into the present. So the idea of shifting is like changing rooms. One room is dirty in your house and you want to go to another room. If it's the same person, the same mentality, the same system, that new room will also get dirty, because the one who makes it dirty is you yourself, the owner of the house. So I think that mindset has to change, and we look at what has to be done. Each player should have a role and must make a contribution. It's not one actor in this process.
Wow, very well said. There's another very interesting comment here from Stefan. Stefan, good to see you. I hope Nairobi is very well. Stefan is one of the people who was very instrumental when we were starting this journey, and he's one of our favorite crazy people. And he's mentioned something that I think I'll also put to the panel in terms of my discouragement with what Chris had said about us being 200 years behind. And Stefan is basically saying, look, why can't we try and sort of jump ahead of the traditional steps that other cities have gone through, and say, for example, we know that the future is electric cars, and I know there was a very big discussion about this yesterday. Why don't we get governments to invest in infrastructure for e-vehicles and say, for example, we're going to try and do something where in another few years or whatever, Kira EV is the official government car, and he says, why should Kampala not become famous for the highest share of e-cars and buses in East Africa and beat Kigali to it? And he cites the launch of borders with UNEP and East Africa University as a very good start. So some of that stuff. The other question that came through is in terms of government, what does government need to be doing to help innovators? And I think, Innocent, maybe you'll be able to deal with this in terms of how we can collaborate. You have NASE here, you've got UNDP, you've got the government, all of them are intent on making sure that we help innovate and build our cities better. How do we make sure everyone is working together? But on this issue of moving our city, I don't know if there were any other suggestions from the panel. If not, we can start with you.
Just may I chip in?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, the idea of moving the city from here to somewhere else is very hard to say it's a bad idea. Just as it may be difficult to say it's a good idea. I think it's a question of evidence. It's a question of evidence, and it would be interesting to know why the other gentleman wants to move the city. Because there is the administration. What services does Kampala give? There is administration, there is industry, there is business, there is finance, you name it. I don't know what you would consider the signature of Kampala's city. So there's that dilemma. I think that the debate on whether to move or not to move the city cannot be closed. It certainly is an interesting conversation, depending on what we are looking at. If you take, for instance, the Victoria Basin, I think Kampala sits on one of the best places in the world. We are almost at the heart, at the center of the world on the equator, in a very amazing location. If you take the climate, the water resources, and what they mean, not just for us, but for this planet Earth. And at the current rate, if we continue growing Kampala horizontally, which can be okay, but it has very serious impacts in that context of maybe environment, sustainability, etc. I think that that conversation can go on. It's a very healthy conversation, because just pondering about it is going to help us to think out loud, to throw the box out, and to bring ideas on the table that could give us the answers we want. Of course, just moving the city from here to another place doesn't solve problems, because if you go to Abuja, they tried to do that, but Abuja now has been engulfed by the same types of challenges we are talking about. Around Abuja, you have a ring of poverty and all those kinds of things, and it has its consequences. You all know what is happening in Nigeria. So we need to have these conversations with a focus on what the problem is we want to solve, and whether this solution actually will work or will not work, and what we learn from elsewhere. So I don't have a straight answer for that. But there was a guy who had a very good question about scaling, then another one about what we can do on innovation. You see, our education system needs to work to be ahead of the dynamics we are seeing. The world is changing. The world is becoming more competitive. The digital revolution is here, and we are catching up, but we could miss out on it. We are very slow when it comes to the agricultural revolution, although we should have already experienced it. We are now thinking about industry. So what type of skills are going to deliver this? If you look at the NDP 3, you are going to, if you just search qualifications and skills gap, the NDP 3 has articulated tables on all the qualification and skills gaps we need if the NDP 3 is to happen, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in energy, whether it's in oil and gas, even governance itself, or digitalization. Where are these skills going to come from? We have to reorient our systems around which we impart skills, around which we upskill, around which we reskill. If you look at countries in the Orient, in Asia, where things are happening, the issue of skills is at the center of their their transformation. Malaysia had to make the capital city, KL, Kuala Lumpur, a magnet for skills. So they were even open to bringing skills from outside Malaysia to drive the revolution they wanted to see in the economic transformation of Malaysia. So that's how important skills are. So you're very right. And I think UNDP is thinking of a skills kind of reset program where we will be working to promote upskilling, reskilling, try to build some kind of platform where different providers of skilling can work more collaboratively together, work backwards to influence the way government designs curriculum. Kids should start thinking entrepreneurship at primary school. If you have a talent, maybe it's music, you should already be thinking a product. Look at MJ. MJ was on the world stage as a kid. So it depends very much in the context in which we develop talent. So skilling becomes important in that respect, and there's a lot of work to do there. But another important issue is the innovation ecosystem. If you look at Vision 2040, Vision 2040 was built on the presumption that innovation would drive the transformation we want. And in that respect, we were supposed to have launched innovation cluster programs, basically to manage the way innovation is positioned at the center of development in key sectors. So now, if you look at the startup ecosystem for entrepreneurship, we see fragmentation and there are challenges there. When you go to different segments of industry, you have challenges there with how fast innovation is happening and the transitions to economic transformation. So if you look overall, in terms of our rating on the Global Innovation Index, we are 114 out of 130 in the world. So that means that our manufacturing is low tech, our industry is low tech, and tech, not technology, but expert knowledge, skills, etc. So we have a big job to do around innovation, and maybe this is why government has prioritized it. If you see the recent cabinet lineup, Dr. Msenero now is the Minister for Innovation, and it's directly under State House. The PS of the Minister of Innovation, their position was phased out, meaning innovation is going to be driven really by the presidency. It's a very good sign, in my view, because it means that we are not going to do much if we don't promote innovation. So those are very good questions. And as UNDP, we are thinking about the support we can provide in that space. This is part of the small contribution we are making, but we are looking at trying to build an ecosystem where all the players come to play. And with the love of this country, let's do what we can where we are together. That's what I could say.
You and Amanda sound so much like you have a brilliant future in politics. You're making us feel goosebumps about our country, the way you just talk about this whole love for country, and that's brilliant. Thanks a lot, Innocent. Here's some more questions coming through, and again, because of the amount of time that we have, because we want to be organized and smart, our official session has to end at 11. But of course, we will continue after that. And so you're able to get any questions answered. And for any of our panel who are able to stick around for a bit longer to help get these questions answered. There's some brilliant ideas coming through the chat, by the way, if you go through them. I'll just pick up some of the ones that have stood out. And thanks a lot for sharing this, Jimmy. Innocent has a concept for a citywide car management system that keeps track of all available parking slots, which motorists can book as they enter the city through an app in the vicinity of where they're going. You know what, Innocent, you're onto a gold mine. Finding parking in Kampala is just such a nightmare that sometimes you don't even want to drive. I'm sure we all know this very well. And you're saying that you didn't enter the idea because you already had another idea. I don't think there's a limitation to this, Dennis. If I'm not mistaken, you can enter as many ideas as there are. But you're also saying that your idea requires a lot more money than the 100 million. You know what I would say? Come and pick this money here and start from there. Like Amanda has been saying, it's not just from one place. You just get the idea going, and you never know if it's that big. Maybe it could start something that goes beyond that. Dennis, there's another question for you here. For the many ideas that many young people have, how will the youth idea help groom them their ideas, even if they don't go through the challenge? Adrian is saying we should not get rid of the mango woman on the streets. What we do is create market for her by educating them on how to add value and things like that. That should be able to help. Tyrell is saying that if we identify areas that can define smart cities, and he picks an area of connectivity, for example, And I think we all know this. There are very many places around the cities where there's too many internet bottlenecks and black holes. Maybe there's an opportunity there, Tyrell, to do something about that. And then Brian is also asking, how best can service delivery be improved to blend into smart cities? And then another question for you, Dennis, that will need to be answered. With everything going tech, what guarantee do we have, for example, that privacy can be maintained and respected? Maybe I should start with this for you, Chris. In terms of this issue to do with privacy now, and I think someone had asked about the geo satellite positioning, people's addresses and all of that. Is that a challenge, or is that something that can be turned into an opportunity?
Yes, I thank you very much. I feel that the more challenges one observes, the bigger opportunities that are going to present themselves. When we find ourselves in a landscape which has a lot of problems, then we should smile and rejoice, because it's us who are going to solve those problems. I channeled Roland Hill from the first industrial revolution of England, and his development of a postal system which went until the last mile. This happened in the first industrial revolution. Since then, we've seen second, third, and now we are at the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution. So we're using technologies like AI, drone technology, and robotics, as well as Internet of Things, which particularly is the postman technology. This kind of technology provides mail delivery to any spatial referenced person, the ability to see in real time how the goods are coming to them, how their parcels move, and how they come back to them. This is ideally fourth industrial revolution. Together with this, we did not stop at this. We went ahead and we built together again with the Directorate of Industrial Training. We built a vocational training course, a skills development program, which we feel is where the gap in this employment opportunities are going to be, in an attempt to build a structured skill set in the people who carry our goods. The informal border borders who you see now are one of the groups of people who we see bringing on board into this, structuring their thinking, structuring their customer care abilities, as well as sanitizing the entire ecosystem so that it can scale. So I think that answers the question on can we get real-time postal system? It is a real-time Internet of Things postal system. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Dr. Ian, let me come to you, and then we'll wrap up the official session. Please, like I said, we're going to go on after 11. Dennis will be picking up in a little bit. But just before we close the official session for now, if you were to say something to a young person on the call today, I'll start with you, Dr. Ian, and then and Amanda. What would you tell that young person who has any interest in doing any sort of innovation or entrepreneurship to do with urban planning or smart cities that we're talking about? If you're talking to a 20-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell yourself?
Okay, one is I'll tell them that we've only the issue happening in cities is an area which has only just begun. We have challenges in Uganda, but those challenges are there in all developing countries, and the solutions that can be developed by a young person are solutions that can be replicated elsewhere because of the similarities because of the similarities in the work, the similarities in the challenges we're facing. So I'll tell him that what he has to do really is to realize that there are lots of challenges, but there are also lots of opportunities. And what he has to do is to actually get involved, go and understand these challenges, and see how he can participate in the resolution of the challenges occurring. It's very possible. Partnerships are possible. These are solutions that young person doesn't have to do alone. He can do with companies. There are cases in Kenya, for example, where Nairobi City and Mombasa are dealing with crime, and Huawei has come on board to support them, right? So it is possible to find partners. Of course, to find such big partners, the city has to be involved. So he'd share his idea through the city, and eventually the partners can come on board. But there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of work to be done. And whatever somebody gets involved in will bring about change the lives of so many. The other thing to note is that they would really have to get involved and undertake deep research and a deep understanding of what's going on to see what needs to be done. Service delivery aspects are a very big challenge. And I think a question has been raised on that, so I'll try to merge it with this one. The question is, how do you deal with service delivery? In cities where services are not being delivered effectively, what can the young person do? He has to ask those questions. He has to go and talk to the people who are not receiving services and see what can be developed to resolve service delivery issues. It's all about openness and transparency, and there are tools that can do that are quite easy to do. Open government monitoring and involving the community. Communities can actually be involved in both monitoring and bringing about the change that would see things happen. So my comment would be, I would summarize by saying that there is a lot to do. There are cases, and the solution that the young person comes up with may actually bring about change that will actually go beyond Uganda. And it will go beyond Kampala if it's a Kampala solution, but it can also go beyond Uganda. Thank you very much.
Wow, powerful. You guys are just completely blowing me away. Amanda, what would you say?
Thank you, Ben. I may not say very different things from what my colleague Ian has mentioned. The first thing I would tell this person, which I actually tell them, I'm happy to interact with them on a daily basis at Makerere University, is that every person is born equal. It's the environment that brings about the different exchange opportunities that make us appear different. So no matter the background, the social background, this person has the same opportunity to be the same and better person if the environment facilitates their change. So I would encourage them not to consider themselves as unlucky, being born in a poor family, uneducated background, etc. The second thing I would do is to tell them that luck alone isn't enough. Luck must also be followed with hard work. We have this story going around that someone was lucky, so and so is a lucky chap. I don't think that we should lead like that. The youth should know that luck alone will not take you anywhere. So you have to really work hard, work on your goal, and keep moving. The other thing, the third one that I would tell this person is working alone is really bad and will not take us anywhere. And you can also see this in terms of urban development. The NEMA is doing their own things, National Forestry Authority, their own things, National Fiscal Planning Board. This kind of thing is terrible, and it affects the beneficiary of all our plans and also kills our dreams. The fourth thing would be negative attitude is really dangerous. The first thing we have to fight is the attitude, your mindset. Positivity, negativity just helps us to drown, and we will never put our heads up. The fifth one, and which I think is the last, is that the future of Kampala, of your city, of Uganda, and most likely the future of Africa is heavily dependent on how creative and innovative our youth will be. So I would encourage this youth to know that there's a chance for them to have a big impact on the continent, not only in Kampala. And also, if they want to join politics later, they must do politics which is pro-people, not pro-individuals, pro-themselves, because this has also really taken us down. Those are some of the few things. Of course, I always need more time to speak about what I'm passionate about.
I know. Call me a prophet, but listening to you and Innocent, I want to prophesy that I see a very bright future in politics in the future for you, near or far. Just remember that you know me when you get there, right? Thank you so much, Amanda. Let me hand you over to another politician, another very good politician, and the guy who is responsible for bringing us all together today, but also the last few weeks. We are coming to the tail end of the thematic sessions, but this is just the beginning of where we are going with this. And of course, one of the big questions that has been asked, Dennis, as I hand over to you, is where we go from here. We've had some really brilliant sessions. We've had some brilliant ideas. We've had some amazing minds sharing some great insights. What do we do with that going forward? But also picking up on the questions that have been asked to give us guidance and all of that. On behalf of NASE and our panelists, I want to say a big thank you to Amanda, to Dr. Chris, to Ian, and to Innocent for joining us on the call. And we are closing officially, even though we're actually continuing. But for those of joining online and watching, we hope that you can be able to do something with this information that you've received today. Go to undp.nase.co.ug. That's undp.nase.co.ug to get more information about the Ideathon. For now, I'll hand you over back to Dennis as we pick up on the rest of the Q&A, and of course,
Oh, I seem to have lost Ben. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Oh, fantastic. Ben, thank you very much. If you can see here, thank you very much for your fantastic moderation. Ben has been moderating most of the sessions so far. He still has one more to go tomorrow, and we're done with the thematic sessions. I'd like to thank on behalf of NASE and the UNDP and the whole Ideathon crew, which has lots of other people that you don't see in the background, to thank our panelists. Amanda, thank you very much for sparing your time to join us, for Innocent, for Doctor, and the postman himself. Thank you so much for illuminating our thoughts and brains and ideas around smart cities. One of the things I think Ben mentioned that you've been able to articulate very well was the idea that smart cities does not necessarily mean technology. I've worked on a project in Cambridge where, while they were talking about smart cities, they were intentional about the Internet of Things and connectivity and things like that. But often we have this theory of copy and paste from the West to Africa. And I was very happy that all you guys are talking about local context, looking at starting with where we are, looking around the environment instead of moving cities, looking within those environments to come up with new ideas and solutions that are going to help us. So I'd like to thank you. As Ben mentioned, this is the end of the official session. But in the past, we've had some interesting discussions where some of our panelists have preferred to stay behind for maybe another 10 or 20 minutes. So you're welcome to stay behind in case there are a number of questions. For instance, Chris, I can see someone who's asking for your contacts in the question. I think they are looking for an opportunity to collaborate. If you could respond to that. Amanda, if you want to stay behind, you're welcome to do so. Because I've seen quite a number of questions in the Q&A, which I'm going to run through very quickly. Some of them have a government element that I may not be able to speak to. So I'll try and rush through them, but if you feel like you have to leave, do not hesitate. Question number one is from Adrian Tegule. He's talking about the distribution of power. My friend Patrick Ateo is always talking about power as a big issue, especially in cities. The use of wireless. Yesterday we were talking about things about wireless cars and things like that. When Amanda, you've traveled extensively. I always see you on your bikes in attending all these smart city conferences. You will have seen the huge wave of Tesla, of countries building infrastructure of charging ports and things like that. How are we going to get rid of all these gas lorries and trucks and buses and vehicles that spew diesel in our medicine? If we don't even have, if we still have load shedding and we can't provide those areas for charging. The next question is from Brian Onechan. How best can service delivery be improved? Donald Haguma, is it possible to give us a brief talk on how youth entrepreneurs can engage with the local governments? This is the thing I was talking about. Local governments, the general feeling I think has been that often our politicians, especially at local level, do not appreciate this smart city aspect or approach that we're talking about. So the young people are asking, how do they sell their ideas to these local authorities? Because ultimately everything you're going to do in the city, if it impacts mobility and lots of other people, might require approval. How do we ensure that these local authorities, whether it's at a planning level, they have this appreciation of the need for young people to create? One of the things I like recently by, I think, Bank of Uganda, is to create what they call a sandpit for fintech companies to go in and play without necessarily strict regulations. Could we have something similar, for instance, Amanda, where you've managed to block off a whole street, and as a result of that, people can see the benefits of being able to walk within your city, to cycle within your city? Could we do that maybe with some of our local authorities? You can stop me anytime, Amanda, if you want to come in on one of those, but those are some of the questions that I'm seeing here. And I could ask my colleagues to upvote some of the questions so I can go through them as well. Georgina Murungi saying, with everything going tech, what guarantee do Ugandans have that their privacy will be maintained? This is a very big issue, especially in the West, but I'm seeing a lot of it coming to the fore here in Uganda. Data protection was never taken seriously. Part of what we're doing as NASE, as part of the Ideathon, is we're very keen on ensuring that people's data is secured. I did share at the beginning this digital platform that we've created, where we have access to your data and we're keeping it safe. But one of the things I know about data and information, and Amanda, we were talking about this earlier at the beginning, your boycotting of Facebook, however temporary that might be, that some of these guys have too much power, too much information on us, and we should have the freedom. My view on this has always been that it's a give and take. We can't take from a digital platform if we don't provide ourselves with the digital platform. But where this question is valid is how much information is out there, who has control over it. I think this week we are looking at Pegasus, which had been apparently involved in hacking people's phones and things like that. So data is very important, and as cities grow, especially when you're talking about the Internet of Things and connectivity, it's inevitable that a huge amount of data is going to be collected. How do we allay fears and concerns of these young people about the amount of data that they're putting out there? Perhaps there's an opportunity for someone to actually come up with a business idea that creates maybe a wall between your data and the service provider. The next question is from Adrian Tegule. Affordable housing, this is another big issue. I don't know whether any one of our panelists wants to talk about this. Amanda, do you want to come in very quickly? I see you're still there, very briefly, and answer some of these questions before we let you go, if you're inclined. Oh, I think we've lost Amanda. Dr. Ian, do you want to come in? Have you got a minute? I can go through the questions, carry on, but if you want to, please, by all means, go ahead.
Please go. What question was that? Sorry.
There's quite a number of questions, but one of them that caught my eye and hence then get in your direction is this idea of affordable housing. If you will, of course, have looked around Kampala, and you can see lots of apartments coming up left, right, and center, but not all of them are affordable. I remember one of my first houses that I stayed in the UK as a student. It was essentially a bed sit with my bed, my chair, and my kitchen, literally one long room with a bathroom at the end of it all. But it was affordable in a nice location. What are your thoughts about affordable housing as we plan these urban cities? Is the case that we should send all these guys outside of the cities, get rid of all these slums and put all those affordable housing so far away from the city, yet we don't have efficient transport to bring these individuals to work in the city? Or do we need to build affordable houses within the city? If you do that, how do you deal with the huge number of people in such a small place with drainage and all these other challenges? Perhaps a question for you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Dennis, for that. The issue of affordable housing is an extremely important issue. I chaired the National Physical Planning Board for 6 years before Amanda took over, and that issue of housing was a very important issue because we actually find that housing at a policy level is done by government, but when it comes to delivery, housing delivery, it's largely done by the private sector. And where the national housing used to be involved in building houses, but they stopped a long time ago. The houses they built are not affordable. Well, they are affordable for a particular group, but when we look at affordable housing, we're looking at housing for the lower income. And that's where we have the challenges that we see in my background, where the lower income people are just going and settling anywhere to meet a need that they have. So the issue of affordable housing is an extremely important issue that probably government and private individuals have to invest in. Of course, one thing that has been noted is that Right now, the housing market is evolving. People build big houses, but at the moment, the big houses are not realizing the rental income that was anticipated. So very many are now actually taking, more or less looking at the middle income, and hopefully some will go to the lower income. So that's an area where the private sector will go, but there is a need for innovation in that area. There is a need for building compactly, because as you rightfully said, you can't take the lower income people to the outskirts of town because they will have to come in to work unless there are jobs where you're taking them.
And that leads me into
problem.
Sorry to interfere, Doctor, but that leads me into another question about which was raised by Bright Muramura, who is saying our biggest problem is transportation. Now, Doctor, you have traveled extensively. You'll see, I mean, if you go to cities like London, I keep using it because that's where I've been for like 17, 18 years. Even the bus system is on time. You know, someone has sat down and worked out that on the 21st of November at 11, there will be bus 406 and it will stop here. If you're going from here to here, you can plan your journey in advance. You land at Heathrow and there is a very clear train timetable. The train is supposed to show up at 10:46. It does show up at 10:46. You have options. You have buses, you have the Ubers now getting into the fray. So you're able to move from one place to another. The need to live in the city is really not very high because you have fast and reliable and affordable, to some extent, public transport. We don't seem to have that here. How can we be building smart cities? These people that we're talking about who need affordable housing, that can't afford to live in the city and live very far, how do we bring them to town? There was another question I saw. Someone was asking about Kayora buses and what are we doing about them? My view, by the way, on the Kayora buses is that they are the worst polluters I've seen on our roads. Some of these orange buses, they just pollute too much. How can it be that the public transport buses are the ones which are most polluting? Over to you about transportation, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Transportation is important for the functioning of a city in all ways. And at the moment, of course, if we look at Kampala, if we first initially keep to the discussion of smart cities, we have a scenario where we have the taxis and we have some buses, but we also have the traffic jams that come that are created around the bus park area and areas like that. And there are plans, I know, for there are bus companies who are willing to come in where they will actually run buses on time. But of course, the question would be how to do this in a manner that is acceptable to all. There's an affordability issue. There's an employment issue. How will they deal with the taxis, which also employ lots and lots of people? Those are issues that must be thought through. But a smart city needs efficient transportation. Transportation saves time in all ways for everybody, and it must be it must be addressed. So Amanda mentioned that we need trains, we need trams, we probably need boats, because if you look at Kampala, why do you have to get into a traffic jam to go to Jinja or to go to some parts of Mukono? You could take a boat or to go to Entebbe. Those are issues that we must think through. But we also need solutions, other solutions that may actually be physical planning solutions, the bus lanes and things like that. But transportation is an area that must be dealt with. And I'm hoping that among the people attending this session, we'll have a great idea on a transportation solution from one of the people attending this session.
Thank you very much. One of the questions that is from Johnson Ahawe. This was to me, but I'm sure you can respond to this as well. In Uganda, internet costs are still very high, and planners are not thinking of reducing costs. How are young people going to catch up? My experience with smart cities is, especially when you start talking about the Internet of Things, driverless cars and things like that. I know that Uganda is not there yet, but surely as we're planning, this is the aspiration that we should be having. When you're talking about the postman thinking of delivering and you want to track your product, right now with lockdown, everyone is hopefully hooked up on the internet, those that can afford. Internet is going to be, electricity and internet are going to be key as we talk about the next phase of Uganda getting into these smart cities, not least because of the connectivity elements that these two bring together. What are your thoughts on the internet connectivity? I know that the cost has been very high for my liking, especially us working with young people. It's not. People are struggling with the data. Even as we speak with the idea fund, we have some of the participants who have not been able to make it because they perhaps have data challenges. So the cost of data, what are your thoughts on that and the effect of the internet on a smart city?
Okay, I'll probably just say this, and this I got from a session I attended, that yes, it is true that internet costs are high, and that's one of the challenges that we face with smart cities and using technology. These costs will have to be brought down, but I know some people from NITA, or in one session I attended, it was mentioned that the more people get onto these services, that's when the prices would go down. Now, so there is an issue of numbers. However, I think this is an area where government would have to come in to see that it lowers these costs. I do know that there are cases where government provides free internet around schools, around post offices, but this happens on weekends or after hours. But also, of course, if we're looking at the real Internet of Things, and our speeds are relatively slow. We don't have 5G. We probably don't have 4G. We're probably at 3G. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on IT, but I think we're roughly at 3G. So that can also affect some of the solutions we can have. But that doesn't mean we can't innovate with what we have, and we can't come up with solutions with what we have. So I'd encourage the participants to actually take advantage of what we have and see how they make it work.
Dr. Ian, it's very funny you should talk about internet speeds. I am lucky I use Zuku, which apparently is the fastest, and it gives me about 10 megabits per second.
That's what I
but
use.
just to put it in context, my house in the UK had Virgin Media, which was giving me up to 120 megabits per second. It's a far cry from, but of course we can't compare these two circumstances are different. And I think one of the advantages countries like Uganda have is to leapfrog, especially using mobile technology. We should be thinking 5G perhaps, as opposed to laying lots of cables, even though fiber optics is a good thing. But again, that's not my area of expertise. Let me go through some of these questions. Joel Mukisa, could you help us understand how many panelists will be chosen and how much funding will they get? This is a very good question and timely, actually. Initially, we set out to attract 1,000 ideas, and from then have 100 businesses, one of whom was going to win 100 million. But of course, there will be lots of other, the plan was to have lots of other winners from different regions, from different sectors. But what we have found is that the excitement and hunger by young people has been such that we are now looking at these figures again. Chances are it probably won't just be the 100 businesses. It is definitely going to be much more than that, because some of the ideas that we have seen come through are brilliant ideas, the kind of ideas that the UNDP has been supporting as part of the Youth for Business facility. And we think that some of these actually qualify not even for the ideathon. Some of them are really brilliant and we want to support them. So am I able to give you the specific number? Probably not. Will it be 100 only? No, it's definitely going to be much more than that. And it won't just be from one sector. It won't just be from Kampala. It will be across the whole country. But we have to go through all the ideas, do the vetting process, and we'll make an announcement perhaps in the next couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. This one was about Mulenzi, who is talking about loving other cities like we love Kampala. This other question is about internet and the cost of that. OTT, good to see Chris come back in. If we identify areas of smart cities, internet access, perhaps, Chris, you might want to talk about this because it keeps popping up. Tareo Wamoro is talking about the internet access. Dr. Ndai, a few minutes ago, we were talking about the effect of internet, the cost, the access, and how that affects a business like yours, and whether there are indeed any opportunities for young people to venture into that space. For instance, could you piggyback off Zuku and have your own local internet network? And how are you finding the cost of the internet on your startup? Chris? I think Chris is going to sign a check first, so we'll let him sign the check and then we'll come back to him. After, are you able to come in, Chris? You're muted a bit. I'll carry on, then you can pop in whenever you're ready. Someone is saying that the idea should be pushed to the village to avoid rural urban migration. I completely agree. Knowledge is power. Great thanks to all the speakers adding inspiration and wisdom to the youth. Dr. Wilbur Sabit. Oh, I know Dr. Wilbur Sabit. Thank you very much for joining us. You're doing great work as well, so keep it up. The world password is 1145 Europe. The rest of the world, 1 billion. I think this one is talking about how quickly the population is growing. This is Mugi talking about how quickly the population is growing. I think Uganda, if I'm not mistaken, has one of the fastest growing populations in the world. And of course, we know that the more people you have, the more rural urban migration you have. So the pressures on cities is only going to grow exponentially, actually, especially in the case for Uganda, where you have very many young people with not much to do in the villages. So that should be an interesting thing to watch. But as more people come to the city, huge opportunities. They will need to sleep somewhere, they have to eat, they have to drink, they have to travel, they have to party, especially young people. So huge opportunities for anyone that is looking. And I think you would best be advised to target where these new cities are coming up from. Solomon Mwebaze Kaiga. Hello, if one idea falls in two categories, what would they do? That's a very good question. We would encourage you to pick one which best suits that particular category. However, you will have opportunities to move an idea from one category to another as we go along. And we'll explain this when we begin the master classes on the 4th of August, if I'm not mistaken. Keep an eye on, and also go back and look at some of the videos, watch some of the videos that we've done around the different sectors. So if you're thinking maybe it is in ICT and smart cities, listen to both and see for yourself where you think the idea best falls. Because if there's going to be a winner per category and yours speaks more to the smart cities than ICT, you might want to move it this side because you might get a chance this side. Either way, if it's a good idea, we will pick it up. Sir Dennis, oh, I didn't realize I had been knighted, apparently. Sir Dennis, but some of these issues to have a smart cities doesn't need a lot of money like vendors. That is true. I think Amanda was at pains to mention that smart cities does not mean a lot of money, lots of technology, high buildings. It's really about the user, making the life of the user easy. Mayinja Bob, can't you have like some settings to tweak the SIM cards so that you can get internet for free? Very good question. I don't know whether Chris, you're able to respond that one. I think that's called hacking. I'm not sure I would condone that, but hack away nonetheless. Oscar, for me, I think to have a smart city, you have to start with the ground planning if you want to have a city just like the house plan. That is very true. And that's part of the job of the National Planning Authority, which our panelist and friend Amanda currently heads passionately. Mugurusi Rogers, good morning everyone. And I'm Mugurusi Rogers from Kisoga, Mukono in the carpentry. I want to influence more jobless youth. Yeah, if you want to do that, let us know how we can help. Send us an email, info@nase.co.ug. Tumusime Kenneth, talking about money needed to run urban cities. Are the urban councils ready to embrace making money out of garbage? I think most of them are. I've seen quite a number of projects, mainly by KCC, but I don't know much about urban cities. But someone did mention that Mbara is actually one of those that has kind of almost privatized rubbish collection, and they seem to be doing well. So yes, there are opportunities in garbage collection. Actually, there's garbage, there's money in garbage. Next question is from Herbert Adrian. Sometimes the bureaucracy involved, especially working with government. This is another frustration that has popped up in terms of the question that we've seen coming. Lots of people, young people, think that government doesn't understand their desire to innovate around smart cities. There has been developed the city authorities, proper mechanisms. Again, this is one for the government that I'm not able to answer, I'm afraid. Kakai Diana, about our applications. I can't access a button to add a second idea. How can I add a second idea? Thank you. Kakai, send us an email. You should be able to do this once you've logged into the platform. If you go in the top right login section, it should give you a grants dashboard where if you log in, then you have all these functionalities. On the main website, you may not have the functionalities, but on the dashboard, if you log in, you should have the functionalities. If you're still stuck, please send us an email, info@nase.co.ug. Oh, cool. Lovely insights here. Can we plan for other cities I think that one was answered. We don't need to move. We just need to live better and solve the issues that we're dealing with at the moment. What does it mean when you attend master classes? Is that when you're closer to winning? Definitely, Mayinja, is that king? That's when you're closer to winning. But the master classes are meant to, because sometimes you can submit an idea and say, I want to put a hyperloop between here and Kabale to avoid the traffic along the way. We think that's a good idea. So we can bring you in a master class and say, so how are you going to make that happen? Who is going to actually use this hyperloop? How much are they going to pay? Are you going to make money? That kind of stuff. And once you've answered those questions, because we work with you to help you answer those questions, then we'll say, okay, there is a business in this idea and it's going to impact X number of people and so on and so forth. And that's how you get closer to winning. So master classes are mandatory if you want to win. Kaboyo Blair, do you think philosophies that were used by former presidents like Jomo Kenyatta, Nyerere on socialism and communism can help us develop this current generation? That's a very interesting one. If you see some of the cities that we aspire to be like, the likes of London, New York, I think have been developed under capitalism. I'm not very sure where the, that's an interesting philosophical debate that I probably don't want to get involved in. Timothy Wasaja, good morning, everyone. Well, I don't know who is in a position to answer my question, but I would like to know the government position as regards to supporting innovators. That's a big question. There's a lot of support from different government departments, from non-government organizations like the United Nations Development Program, where in the same boat doing the same thing. Our colleagues at Material Innovation Incubation Center doing so. So there's a lot of help. I don't know exactly where to send you, but if you start with the Ideathon, we might be able to send you in the right direction. I'm trying to wrap this up in the next 2 minutes, so let me just go through this. Many ideas that many young people. How will the Youth Ideathon help them groom their ideas, even if they don't go through this challenge? That's a very good question. We are finding already that these thematic sessions alone have been very impactful to very many young people, including actually old people who have tuned in to listen to the discussions we've been having. And lots have been inspired to do other things, even though they have not participated in the Youth Ideathon. Some of the sessions we've had have made it onto TV news and on radios, and we've reached millions of people already. So I'd like to think we've inspired quite a number of people already that are beginning to work on their ideas or change their mindsets around a number of things. We've learned a lot, myself included. So lots of people are being helped. But if you have an idea, it is better that you submit it as part of the Ideathon and go through the process to get the support that you well deserve. This is another question. I'll move over through this one. Software. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution. Someone from Gulu is talking about cleaning and laundry services. Those are going to be needed. Underground hyperloops. Yeah, I'm all for that. We need to perhaps speak to the National Planning Authority. Amanda should help us make these true, especially in this last few weeks when we've seen billionaires fly to the edge of space. These things are possible. I know they take a lot of money, but we should be able to dream that big. So I think I've gone through quite a number of questions already. Let me see if there are any interesting messages that I can read. Bana Mugema has been helping answer some of the questions. There is a government program at the Ministry of ICT called NASE-UNDP. Yes, I have seen quite a number of individuals end up in that direction. Yes, quite a number of questions which my colleagues have already responded to. So I think if there are no further questions, I would like to use this opportunity to thank everyone, perhaps to bring in one of my colleagues from the UNDP, Bana or Hadija. Bana usually is the one who's brave enough to step in. Just to wrap up, what are your thoughts on today's session? Any closing remarks that you want to give some of the participants that are still on, and then we can wrap it up. Bana, are you there?
I'm here, Dennis. Thank you very much to you, and thank you very much to all our attendees, to our panelists, for those who've managed to stay behind. We are eternally grateful to you. Again, a very amazing session that has been very educative and informative. I like to say that a lot of times from the UNDP, we sit and we are learning. And each of these sessions brings some new learnings on board. And I was particularly inspired by Dr. Ngabirano, who has been really advocating for being the change that we want to see, and not thinking that somebody else is going to solve the problems that we are currently facing. As cities, all the panelists have really pointed out quite a number of the strategic risks we are facing and how we can try and solve these problems. So the ball is in your court as a youth and young entrepreneurs to try and solve these challenges. The opportunities are vast. From where I was seated today, I saw quite a number of things that young people can do in helping us to solve these. And we're grateful that you've been part and parcel of this. And we hope to hope to see a number of you in the master classes, but thank you for joining. Our last session is tomorrow. Do not hesitate to also hit the link and do apply. You just never know where your idea will take you. So thank you very much. And of course, to you, Dennis, and the NASE team for doing a tremendous job, as well as Ben, I think he dropped off. We are eternally grateful to you for running these sessions, especially during this difficult time. I keep saying, when you sit on your computer and you can see around 150 people joining, there is this hunger for knowledge that is being seen throughout in all the thematic sessions. So thank you very much, and over to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Bana, apologies, by the way, for catching you unawares. I noticed that you picked some lessons from Chris earlier in terms of managing one of your little ones who was in the background. But I think we're now working from home. That's the situation we all find ourselves in. But thank you both very much. Chris, do you have any last thoughts, parting words for all the participants, or anything that you thought you left out that you could share?
Yeah, maybe all I can say is thank you, NASE, for this. It's only going to get better and easier for those who are innovating around problem solving, because in the past we didn't have this. Even the attitude was different. But with what I see NASE doing and what NASE has done and what UNDP is doing, I thank you all. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to how your postman turns out. I know you're on to great things already, so we're really excited. We'll be rooting for you. Thank you very much. And to everyone who's still on, what hunger that you've been able to hang in there with us for close to 3 hours. So with those few words, I'd like to thank everyone, my team especially, Jimmy, Ivy, Brenda, Wire, and some of the other partners that we work with, Paula Mugisa, Dixon Mushabe, and of course to Dorothy Namuyomba on the sign language. I think I should learn one of those sign languages. I could be swearing for all I know, so I better keep my fingers down. But thank you very much for helping and supporting us. And then we shall see tomorrow at the same time, 9 a.m. on our last session, which is bound to be equally exciting. It's about the science, technology, engineering, and maths, and ICT as well. So from NASE and the UNDP team and the whole Ideathon crew, thank you, over and out. Have a good day, stay safe.
Albert, are you still on?